Hello everybody, my name is Ratnus and welcome to This Week in Mythic Plus. This week's affixes are Fortified, Sanguine, Grievous, and of course Shrouded. It is kind of a somewhat nasty week, especially for our first dungeon that we'll take a look at here, which is Grimrail Depot. Sanguine in the train cars here. I've done it a little bit on PTR. It is not an especially great place for that affix. So the play is to pull mobs back to cleared areas where you can, and then kite forward as they start dying. But even then, it's going to be really nasty. Even then, it's going to be an affix that will likely cause some healing or some group damage or cut you off, especially with Grievous active as well. You're going to take a Grievous tick. Like, the Grievous is going to start ticking on you because you've had to walk through some Sanguine. So, yeah, this dungeon. Sanguine, Spiteful, Storming, one other affix as well. Quaking. All those affixes are nasty in here. So most weeks it's going to have something that is pretty rough in the, confined train cars area. Last boss as well, even though it's fortified and not tyrannical, the last boss will actually put everybody pretty low and put Grievous on them. So look out for that. There are some safe spots on this fight that you won't be safe from the initial damage, but if you stand on these like wooden slats that are at the four corners of the train car, you won't be standing where the lightning actually spawns, and so you won't stay in that, but you will still take the upfront damage from the thing breathing on you. So that can make it a little bit better, but still a nasty, nasty fight. Iron Docks. Not too bad with Sanguine, I don't think. I actually don't know if these mobs trigger Sanguine, the Iron Star mobs, but even if they do, they get one shot by the stars, so it's not like it should cause a problem to have Sanguine lying around. Couple things I like to do in this dungeon. This Infiltrator, tagging it in once you've killed off the wolf and you're just finishing off the flesh render, I think is a really good way to just get some stats for the rest of the dungeon and some count. You don't really need the count in this place if you're hitting everything with your star, but if you don't hit everything with your star, or if you want to skip some of this stuff at the start, then, you can instead grab the count from mobs like that one and from this Infiltrator on the side of the boat as well. Of course, you can always, if you ever realize you're going to be low on count, if you ever skip too much early on, you can always grab these pulls as well. Streets. So I'm actually advocating going left in streets now. This is something I think is going to be, especially on weeks with like on-death trash affixes, I think this area is going to be kind of nasty with those affixes. This Dreadlord as well, pretty nasty in these pulls too. Whereas going left, you can actually grab... These pulls really aren't too bad. You got to kick the Ancient Dread on this, or else you'll get, like, reduced cast and attack time. You got to aim the frontal away from the group. This mob, like, grips everybody in and then puts those beam splicers, and so you just got to keep moving it so that the beam splicer isn't in the middle of the area that you can fight it in. This mob, just a Dire Horn from Ataldazar, Frenzied Charge. You just want to make sure that that only hits one person and not the whole group. And you can pull this little Infiltrator. There's two Infiltrators here, so you can get a lot of stats by going left and a lot of count. And then you just can grab, another two Infiltrators, one Peacekeeper, do this boss, do this mini-boss, go across and do Mize's Oasis, do the RP event, go across, do Postmaster. You can grab this Infiltrator from the back of that room. Do Postmaster. Again, you can grab whatever amount of these neutral Infiltrators in this area you want. We don't really need the count. And just by doing that, you haven't really gone out of your way anywhere. You haven't had to pull any of the big pulls, and you're all set on count in this dungeon. So I'm advocating for this now. You can still go right instead if you'd prefer, but I actually think this is going to be a nice and easy way to do this dungeon. So Leahs Gambit. So Leahs Gambit, I have two different routes available this week over on Raider.io. The links will be in the description, by the way, if you want to grab these routes. One of which doesn't do a skip. You just hug left, grab every Murloc pack on the left, including this one that's kind of not really on the left, but if you just hug left, grab every Murloc pack on the left, grab the Patrolling Giant and Shore Runner, and then pull back this pack kind of into that safe area that you've cleared, kill it off there, and you just keep walking in a straight line, you will get your count in this dungeon, so that's a nice little thing you can always remember. Or you can instead do this skips route where we're going to skip all these Guardians. You can actually tag this Infiltrator and the Guardian won't come. So getting into this room, throw like a ranged ability on this Infiltrator and it'll come and you can fight it. But then we skip, this route's actually skipping Zolgamux as well. Now they've nerfed Zolgamux a bit this week, so maybe it'll start feeling worth to pull again. But in this dungeon in particular, you can't see her Shadow Eruption in like 90% of the areas you'd fight her if you don't want to move her more than like 20 yards. You can see it if you pull her like all the way back to where this trash pack spawned, but there's like terrain here that makes it invisible, there's the river here that makes it invisible, and there's all this other stuff you're trying to not pull if you're fighting this pack that's like in the area. So yeah, I instead say let's just skip this and say we don't need the stats, skip these things as well, do a Shroud or an Invis pot, skip both those packs, and we are good. I guess I should add Hillbrand in there somewhere, but it's obvious where you fight that, right? Junkyard. So Junkyard, again, it has a hard mode enemy that flies over different enemies each week. In NA, it starts by flying over Trixie and Nano, and then it goes to fly over Gobamak after you kill the Gunker, which I've just done in this M0 to just confirm where it goes. But in EU, it's going to do something different. So in EU, you might not be able to use this Gunker first route. You should know, based on whether or not the hard mode mob is over Gunker. Even if it is not over Gunker, you may not be able to use this route because maybe it goes to Trixie second. I'm trying to like track where they are, and once I can figure out a pattern and figure out where the EU ones are each week, I should be able to help make a route that works for EU as well. But at least this week, the Gunker first route should work for NA, and if you're in EU instead, you can like use last week's route, and that should work if this one doesn't. Workshop. So Workshop I've changed my mind on. Workshop I was advocating skipping this pack, but this pack at the end of the dungeon, there's two reasons I don't want to skip it anymore. One is just really annoying to skip. You need a Warlock Gate or you need to use a Battle Res, and even the Warlock Gate, you need to put it in the right spot or else people will pull while they're pressing the gate. And so I actually don't think this trash pack is worth skipping, not just for that reason, but also because they seem to have nerfed the short out damage by a huge amount in this dungeon compared to what it was like in BFA. So this pack I don't actually think is all that lethal. Instead, especially on Sanguine, what I'm trying to skip now is this area. These mobs, the Sanguine's like invisible under things. You're trying to group up these living wastes, but then the Sanguine comes out. It's a pain. So we're going to kill this Dreadlord, and then we're just going to do a skip, and we'll do the mini-boss, and then we'll do boss, and this is all the count we can skip. And we are good. You don't need this Dreadlord here, but you can grab it if you want for the stats. Just don't fight this while you're trying to do the gauntlet. Run through the gauntlet first, and then have somebody hit it with a long-range ability and bring it into this pull if you want to fight it. What else we got? We got Lower. So Lower, I've got two different routes that are they're more similar than I thought they would be. There's a skips route and a no skips route, but the skips route, it actually only really does one skip, which is just Shroud, Invis, or die to go back to the start of the dungeon and avoid fighting these ushers. The skips route also goes with a different boss order than the no skips route. The no skips route does a pretty simple, like Opera, and then we go to Maiden, and then we jump down to Morose, and then we go finish off Ataman. And that route, I feel like that's like a simple thing that should be easy to understand and doesn't involve a lot of like running around or backtracking. But the skips route instead does Maiden last. So we do the Opera event, do some trash under here, and then we either skip or die to go back to the start of the dungeon. And either way, then we run and we jump down to Morose. Do Ataman after that. Ataman. Yeah, we do this. We do Ataman after that. And then we come back up. We come back up through here. Do a little bit of this trash. This trash, I'm still undecided on if I want to do this or if I want to do stuff in the kitchens above Ataman. I actually think this trash isn't too bad in this area, but you could skip this and add trash in that area instead. And then we do Maiden last, and we do Maiden with all of the Shrouded buffs to make it a little bit easier. Morose might be a better boss to do last for that, especially on like Grievous week, although they've nerfed it quite a bit this week, so not 100% sure what the best play is still in this dungeon, but those are what I've got this week. I'm sure these routes will continue to change, especially in this dungeon, as we figure out more of like what's worth, what's easy, what can pugs handle, that kind of stuff. Finally, Upper Karazhan, Zolgamux has moved. I've just tested. It's moved to this Shrieking Terror. So I think you should just fight it since it's that early in the dungeon. Just get the stat buffs, fight it early, send some cooldowns on it, and then let your cooldowns recover when you do this stuff, and then send cooldowns again on Curator. I think that's probably the move for it. And then still skip all this stuff, probably still skip these Infiltrators, skip this Flamebringer if you can. That needs to be Shroud or Invis, basically, or like a fancy Mage Invisibility or Feign Death skip after pulling it to the side and using an immune. because you can't sap or imprison this like you used to be able to do in Legion. Then we got Shade of Medivh, which they nerfed Flame Wreath damage, I think, a little bit, but still going to be nasty, especially with Grievous, even though it's fortified. Hop down to here. So the way that I like to do this trash section is you land on the books, and then just run this way, right? Basically run this way, grabbing this mob, and then run this way. And if you do this, you don't really run into any of the patrols or the other things. This rat patrol will kind of come close to where you're going, but you just wait for that, and then you don't have to grab any of the other mobs in this area. Then we go up to the library, grab all the mana worms here. You don't actually need all of them, but you can grab as many or as few as you want. Pretty easy pull, pretty fun pull. And then I think you should skip this stuff at the end here. The problem with this skip is it kind of needs to be invis pots because Shroud doesn't seem to reliably get you through these two. So invis pot and run through, and you get to skip some nasty and time-consuming mobs here. And yeah, that's Upper Karazhan. You don't need to do any of these skips and stuff in here if you don't want to. You can just fight everything in the dungeon. If you don't wipe, the timer in here is totally fine. But I think that's what I think the best stuff is to skip, and it's mostly pretty easy to do those. Yeah, this is a season where getting invis pots on your characters is a pretty good thing to do. You don't have the woe drifters anymore, so yeah, that's it. That's it for this week in M+. Good luck in your dungeons. Hope you get some score. Hope you get to make your Valor upgrades. Hope you're having fun with this season. I actually definitely am. Curious to know what you think of the nerfs that came into the dungeons. I guess I haven't covered them in this video, but there's a Wowhead post about them that they nerfed some of the lower abilities. You know what? Let's take a quick look at the dungeon nerfs that are coming through. Mythic Plus Season 4 tuning, Professional Video Maker. Yep, there they are. So yeah, Zolgamux cast Blood Barrier less often, moved in upper, as I said. Grimrail Depot, you can purge Storm Shield on the last platform, which you absolutely should if that goes off. You should kick it as well. The Cinder Seers no longer cast Lava Wreath. I think that's the ground debuff. It does a lot of damage in the trains. They nerfed the damage on Mad Dash, which I think usually is supposed to just hit the tank. Didn't feel like it was too bad there, but maybe some tanks were getting clapped. The damage on the Thunderous Breath was reduced by 25% initially. Still does a huge amount of damage, I believe. The Wolf won't hit people multiple times with Shredding Swipes, so that's going to make it a lot less lethal. Feeding Frenzy is going to break in about half the time. Skullock's going to do a little bit less to your tank, and Koromar's not going to cast Shattering Blade. Throw Coin is not going to murder your tank on the Philanthropists anymore. The Ruffians on Westfall Story, which is not the opera this week anyways for NA, have been nerfed. The Winged Assistant's health have been nerfed. Morose's Garrote duration has been reduced to 1 minute, so this is no longer like we need Holy Paladins for this fight, although Holy Paladin's still really good for managing Garrote. Dinner Party nerf, so it's a little bit less bad to have multiple guests stacked up, although they still do make things harder to stop and do more damage. And then, yeah, the Flame Wreath 30% damage nerfs came in, so yeah, curious to know what you guys think about those nerfs. I think they're a pretty good set of nerfs. I know that a lot of people feel like upper and lower are really hard compared to the other dungeons, and they definitely are tougher. Part of that is, I think, unfamiliarity. Part of that is just like a different old philosophy of dungeons that had a lot more badly telegraphed or one-shottier things. And so, like, I really like they've been doing, like, adding swirlies to stuff in Iron Docks. That's been a really good kind of tuning, I think, to do that. But yeah, I think they should probably continue to make these sorts of adjustments for the next couple weeks until all the dungeons are sort of in line in terms of what key level people can do. Junkyard is a huge outlier in terms of, like, you can do it 5 key levels higher than the other ones because it's such a non-lethal dungeon, and you get like 20% more damage from the bots in there. But besides that, I think the other 7 dungeons, they should try and target them to be within a couple key levels of each other, and upper, lower, and depot in particular definitely felt harder than that last week. But I think it's good to not make too many sweeping nerfs too early, and instead, do it kind of piecemeal like they're doing, iterating on the worst offenders and giving us time to actually learn the counterplay to these things as well, because definitely some of the reason that Tazavesh feels way easier than these older dungeons is that we played Tazavesh last season and we haven't played Karazhan in 6 years or whatever. So that's my take on those nerfs, but yeah, definitely, I do think there probably need to be another 1 or 2 waves of about that size before the dungeons are in balance, but taking the time to land the correct ones is not something I begrudge them. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Bye.